Hello, welcome to another episode of Two Rivers Tuesday. I'm your host, Maggie Colella, here with John Teague. Hey, John.
Hello.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good.
Yeah?
Yes. All right, on Sunday, we have lots to celebrate.
Yes.
First thing, there was a baby born into our church family.
Yes.
Tell us about that
Cutler George Crow, Doc and Lauren Crow. If you know the Crows, then you might know a little bit about their journey through their struggle with infertility that I think has been about a 6-year journey.
Wow.
And I feel very close to this because I've prayed a lot of prayers in particular for this child to come one day, because Doc and Lauren were in our life group for a really long time. And so I got to hold this little answer to prayer because Cutler George was born on Saturday, and so Katie and I got to go hold him on Sunday, and just a beautiful picture of just how good and gracious God is.
Yeah, that is such a sweet testimony to God's goodness, and such a testimony to how beautiful it is when you let people into your story before it like has the bow on it.
Yes.
So like Lauren and Doc could have easily not let us pray for them,
Yes.
or not like tell us about the journey that they were walking through. And that would have robbed our whole church family of getting the privilege and honor of like grieving and mourning with them, and then getting to celebrate and rejoice with them.
Yes.
So it's beautiful.
That's part of life together. And, Courtney Gamble reminded us in staff this morning of all the times that we have prayed. And I remember there was a season, and I know what she was referring to, back at the old office when we would meet for prayer, and we'd pray over these couples who were struggling with infertility, because they allowed us in, they invited us in, and we gathered and we prayed, and we've seen God answer prayers.
Yeah.
And so, and some of them took longer than others to answer, but anyway, really cool.
Yes, yeah. So we have lots more to talk about, but that is just a short reminder that God answers prayers.
Yes.
And that like we need to hear that. And it
Yeah.
seems like, yes, I know that, but it's like, tell yourself again, like he really does. And so we can come to him, we can ask him big things.
Yeah.
So we wanted to take time to celebrate that. And we also want to celebrate, we commissioned 14 new members into our church family on
Yes.
Sunday, which is always so beautiful to see how God first of all brought them into his family by adopting them, and then brought them into our family by bringing them into our church. And so that's so exciting.
I was in the library on Sunday praying for some folks. We had elder prayer on Sunday, and so I was late getting into the 10:45 gathering. So you were up there, and everyone, when I walked into the back of the gym, everyone was standing and everyone had their arms extended toward the new members. And I was like, what a cool picture of just how awesome it is to be a part of the body of Christ.
Yes, it is so beautiful. I was thinking about those people that we commissioned, and there's like so many reasons why I'm excited about them coming into our church family, and the way that the Lord is going to use their gifts and their wirings to build us up. But just simply their presence alone is going to be such a gift to our body. Like
Yes.
those people, just by nature of them being there, being who they are, showing up in their life groups and on Sunday mornings, that alone builds us up and is such a gift that we're thankful for.
So true.
All right. You are probably listening to this on Tuesday. This is Two Rivers Tuesday. And tonight, if you're listening to this on, what is it, March 5th?
It's the 4th.
Okay, but Tuesday will be the 5th.
Oh, you're right.
Yes. We
Really
want
ruined
you.
that one, John. Sorry, Maggie. You were doing so well.
We want you to come to prayer night tonight if it's March 5th when you're listening to
That's
this.
right.
That's
Yes.
the moral of
Unless
the story.
you get the early release.
Yeah. It will be what time?
6:30.
Yeah. Why do you like prayer night?
Oh, why do I? That's so good. I love praying with other people because I think I struggle to pray by myself. My ADD, my attention span, my distraction, my propensity to just start thinking about other things makes it really hard. And when I'm with other people, I'm like, yes, what they're praying. Yes, that resonates in my spirit. I agree with that. That's one of the reasons I love prayer night. And then I just love how Jesse leads us kind of like in and out of worship as we worship and we pray. And the whole thing is about spending time with God and all together getting to do that.
Yes, it is. It is really beautiful. I love prayer night because I don't know if this is like theologically accurate, but I feel like the Lord just does something special. I think like when his people are gathered or we're coming expectant, like I don't know what that secret ingredient is to prayer night, but in my heart, every time I've gone to prayer night, he just does something unique in my heart. And so I want that for other people. So we want you to come.
Yes.
All right. So another question for you. Have you heard of girl math?
Girl math.
Or why don't you tell me what you think it is? Define girl math.
Oh gosh.
It's a trap.
It's a trap. Yes, for sure. That's a trap. I think it's just where girls do math, right?
Do you think girls are good at math?
Hey, my girls crush it at math.
That's awesome.
Yes. Hope and Nora in particular are really good at their algebra. Now, nobody in my family has done well with geometry because it's the worst, because whoever uses that. But I know that's not really what you're talking about. I've heard like rumblings of this idea of girl math. That's like it's not real math.
Yes.
You explain it to me though.
So girl math is like what I'll say to Jake where I'm like, go shopping and I come back and he's like, how much did you spend? And I'm like, theoretically, let's just use real numbers here. I'm like, I spent $200.
Yes.
And I'm like, but don't worry, I'm not keeping it all. So like, you don't even have to worry about that number. I'm taking probably most of it back.
Yes.
I'll probably save you money here. Like,
Yes.
don't even worry. Or like, if you go and return something, you feel like that you just made money.
Yes. Okay. Yeah, right. Yeah. Or it was on sale, right? So you needed to get it. And so instead of thinking like I spent $35, what you're really saying, or, you're like, I saved, $20.
Yes.
Like,
I tell Jake often, I save you so much money.
That's right.
You're welcome.
Yes. Okay. Yes. I have heard of this. Yes. You're going somewhere with
Yes.
this.
So on Sunday, Colby talked about our relationship with the Lord and how we are in a covenant, not in a contract. And so in a contract, you're often like calculating. And when we view our relationship with God as a contract that we have to like calculate, I don't know why I just thought of girl math because oftentimes when we're like calculating in our minds about like our good works or the equation of like what that equals, it's kind of like girl math because it's so flawed and like illogical. It's like, that's not how that works.
Yes. Okay. I got you.
That's how I got there.
I'm tracking with you.
Girl math. So tell us a little bit, what did Colby talk about? What is the difference between a covenant and a contract, just to kind of get us started?
The difference between a covenant and a contract. Well, I think that maybe at its simplest form, a covenant is something that a contract is like, you don't do your end of the deal, I'm not doing my end of the deal. You don't do your end of the deal, the contract is null and void. It's broken off. But at least in terms of a covenant in God's eyes, like the beautiful thing about the covenant is that even when we don't fulfill our end of the deal, God will fulfill his.
Yeah, that's good. So we oftentimes will fall into thinking that our relationship with the Lord is a contract.
Yeah.
And the beauty and the truth of the gospel is that he has covenant keeping love for us.
Yes.
But we have to be aware of how we often fall back into these like contractual calculating mindsets. So we do that with the Lord, but that also kind of bleeds into other relationships. So how can we drift into treating our spouse or our friends or our life group or our church family? How can we drift into more of like contractual type relationships with those people? What does that look like?
Well, I think about the easiest place to think about a contractual relationship that's actually a covenant, though we might treat it more like a contract, is in our marriage relationship. So when your spouse doesn't necessarily, when you don't think they're living up to their end of the bargain, it's kind of like, well, if you're not going to come my way, I'm not going to come yours, right? Like, well, if you're not going to do your part, I'm not going to do my part. And when you start doing your part, then I'll start doing mine, right? Like that's a contract, right? And that's a really hard way to live relationally, right? Like there's nothing that'll probably destroy a relationship faster than just that feeling.
Yeah.
Like, like you've always got to be like, have I done enough? Have I come to the middle, and then they come to, like, that's just not how it works.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and I think God modeled that for us. He went all the way, and that's how we're supposed to, I think, live in relationship with one another. Be willing to go all the way.
Yes.
And not like, I'll meet you in the middle. If you do something, I'll do something.
Yeah. Can you think of how this shows up in friendship? How we kind of start to calculate or only want to go halfway, that kind of thing?
Yeah. So maybe, why am I always the one who has to invite so-and-so out to do something?
Yep.
Like, I was the one who invited them out, the last time. It's their turn.
Yes.
It's their turn to host or whatever,
Yes.
Just sort of keeping track of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that if we were to model more covenant keeping love in our marriages and in our friendships, we would just be willing to go all the way and not even have that like list in our minds of like, who did what, where are they at, how are they measuring up to me, have I done this or that, have they done this or that. It's just like we can actually be free of all of that calculating and all that like contract like nitpicking. And when we are, I think we're free to love and receive love in such a more beautiful, compelling way that the world will see and be like, oh, Jesus is like that.
Yes. And just to go back to the marriage thing, I think that sometimes when you think about a contract, you think about maybe you sign a contract for someone to do work on your house. Well, you're not going to pay them until they've done that work and done it to your satisfaction, right? So try to imagine treating Jake like that. Like I'm not going to reward you with my affection or my love until you have done whatever it is that I think like needs to be done to the quality that it needs to be done.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And when we're in a covenant, it's not about that at all. Right. And so I think about just even like the ways we withhold affection and even like intimacy in a marriage, like from our spouses because of we don't think they've done enough.
Yes. Yeah. And that mindset is so deeply ingrained in us that we translate that and put that on God.
Yes.
And so we think, okay, because I haven't done X, Y, or Z, therefore he wants distance or he's going to pull away from me or he's not approving of me. And therefore like we also shy away and it becomes such like a vicious cycle because of course you're not eager to like run to him if you think he's not approving of you and all of that. And it just, you're right, it just destroys relationship on every level.
It makes me think of like, so maybe you're at an arcade and you've won a bunch of tickets, and you're looking to see like what kind of, random junk you can get with your tickets. Or maybe it's like when I was in school and my kids, when they were younger, like in elementary school especially, they'd be like, if you sell a certain amount, you get into this level of prize, like,
yes.
And so it's like, what do I have to do for God to get into the like whatever level, like into the where he answers my prayers level, and then like even like bigger prayers or smaller prayers and like are based on, this is the calculation you start to do.
Yes.
Like, well, I just don't even know if I could ask for that because we've not been going to church very often, as if God's like got a ledger up there,
Yes.
And so when we do that, like we're totally not thinking relationally, and we're not thinking covenant, we're thinking contract and strangers get into contracts,
Yeah.
There's no intimacy there.
Yes. Yeah. And I think a lot of times this conversation about works and following the law, we often think, okay, I don't need to try to do those good works to earn God's favor. But and that is true, but I think what we're getting at is more the danger that's probably we're more susceptible to falling into. And that's that we're not necessarily trying to earn God's favor by doing X, Y, or Z. It's more like we will give ourselves a grade, like calculate our past works and how we did that day.
Yeah.
And then that tells us how worthy we are to even approach God or not. Does that make sense?
Yes. And then that impacts like kind of our confidence in our relationship with him is another way to say
Yes.
that, right? That sort of might affect our joy or enjoyment of him, because we're not sure if we've done enough.
Yes.
That's
And
kind of
so
what you're saying.
how does the gospel like come into this picture? So say I am going to sleep tonight and I'm just like kind of reviewing my day, which I don't know if everyone's wired like this, but that's what I do as I'm going to sleep is I'm just like thinking through my day. And say I am calculating through like how I performed on this day and I end up getting a bad grade.
Yeah.
What do I do with that reality in that moment? How can the gospel intersect?
Yeah. Gosh. Well, I think that when we are starting to feel that like, oh, I'm going to get a bad grade here, like I missed a lot of problems on this test of the day,
Yes.
I think we just sort of slide that in front of God, right? And be like, here, God, this is what I think I know to be true about this day. But what is true about the gospel is that we're not being graded on our righteousness or unrighteousness. We're being graded on Jesus's perfect righteousness. He crushed it. He aced the test. And so this isn't about like pass fail. This is about like learning and growing, right?
Yes.
Like, yeah. Do you have something to add to that?
No, I would just say, yeah, like how can I look at my day and see like, okay, that wasn't about the grade that I got, but maybe he is inviting me into something, or maybe there is discipline that can come from a loving father, but I don't have to like wear that day as my identity and my shame and like condemn myself.
Yes, absolutely. You shouldn't condemn yourself. Or Colby talked about putting on the shoulder pads of shame.
Yeah.
Like as a football player, kind of like, and how you wear those and you feel that and it sort of weighs you down, so to speak. Don't put on the shoulder pads of shame, but instead be like, Lord, I want to nail that one next time.
Yeah.
Like, would you help me with that? Like, or like search my heart, one of those dangerous prayers, like search my heart here, God. Why did I like just totally whiff on this thing that I'm thinking about from my day? Or why did I treat this person that way?
Yeah.
Would you show me what's in my heart? Knowing that like facing the reality of that is not like going to like lead to your condemnation, right? It's like it leads to your maturation.
Yeah.
Your growth. So
yeah, that's good. I think if we're in that calculating mindset, the way we view those failures, it's like that either condemns or I can freely embrace like, I did fail and I can like own that, and that doesn't determine my status or my standing. I'm still loved, still approved of. And that's what we talk about. And that's the heart of Engage the Heart in our life groups. It's like, because of this very thing we're talking about, your sin and failure and weaknesses do not define you and do not alter your status before God. Therefore, you're free to confess it and remind one another of the gospel.
Yeah.
All right, so kind of back to the text, the Judaizers were trying to convince the Galatians that if they followed the law and like worked hard enough, they would earn this special favor with God. And so they were beginning to put their trust in works.
Yeah.
So we too, like we've talked about, can drift into that putting our trust in works, however you want to word it. Maybe you're calculating or however you want to word it. But what are some other signs that you're starting to put your trust in works?
Do you have an example?
I think you're starting to put your trust in works if you start feeling the distance that we talked about, like it's starting to affect the relationship. That's going to be like a red flag. If you're feeling self-righteous, you're putting your trust in works. Like anytime I'm like, wow, Maggie's doing awesome. Like, good job,
Yes.
Maggie. You're welcome, God. That pride and like, I'm crushing it.
Yeah.
That is a red flag that I'm putting my trust in my works.
And the other side of that coin is probably like seeing where other people aren't crushing it, and then comparing yourself to them. And it's like this sneaky self-righteousness
Yes.
that creeps in, and you are kind of keeping score there. And like, you got an 84 on the test, but everybody else was in the 70s.
Yes.
So like, you're actually doing pretty good, Maggie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's, again, back to that like calculating mindset. Like, you're putting your trust in your works if you kind of view everyone and I'm just like imagining like a little grade floating above their head. Like, that's how you view other people and yourself, as this constant awareness of like what their score is.
Yeah.
That is a huge indication that you're putting your trust and your worth in your works, and you're doing that to other people too, that they are the sum of their good works in your mind.
And this is a little bit off topic, but because I don't want to move off of that too quickly, because I think like that's an awful way to live when you're trying to live in relationship with other people, right? Yeah. But also it sets some kind of like weird, like it like kind of lowers the standard, of like, it shouldn't be about like, well, just don't cuss less than, this is a terrible example, but cuss less than everybody else around you.
Yes.
And then you've done better, right? It's more like, no, how do I honor the Lord with my mouth? Like we were singing on Sunday, your praise be ever be on my lips, ever be on my lips. And all I could think about in that moment, and I got to be careful, not in a shameful way, but just in a way of like reflection. It was like, there have been so many other things like that have crossed these lips this past week that weren't like praiseworthy.
Yeah.
And like, that was just a call for me back to like, Lord, forgive me of that. I do want your praise to be on my lips. But it's like, going back to the whole comparing yourself to other people thing, you kind of get this like whatever the least common denominator is or something, and like, and that's not really what we're pursuing.
Right. Yeah. Because Jesus is the standard. So it's like there's a sense in which you can't do it. He's the standard, but that doesn't make you want to just give up and not try.
Right.
But it frees you to try from the like right posture.
And I think that's really key. Like, in this whole conversation that we've been in this whole time in the series of Galatians, like, I think we could be tempted to just be like, well, if we're not supposed to try, like if works aren't what we're, stacking up here and trying to qualify, and we all know that that's the truth, like, well, what do we do then? And I think that's why they were struggling in the churches in Galatia, because they're like, surely there's something we need to do. This just feels so scandalous that like there's nothing we can do. And I think it points to what you're saying. No. Jesus talked all about what we do, right? Like he talked a lot about following him and doing what he did, and there are all kinds of instructions in the Bible. But we do that no longer from a heart place of like fear and condemnation and shame, but more of like a joy of like, I want to grow and become more like Jesus. I want to be more loving as a friend and as a husband and as a dad. Like I want this. I want to be more pure in the things that are in my mind, and the things that come out of my mouth. Is that,
I
it's
think
about
that's
motivation.
Huge. Yes. Yeah. Because the temptation is to be like, well, then your behavior doesn't matter, or like whatever.
Yeah.
And that kind of sounds nice. It's like, oh, okay, great.
Yeah, right.
But that's not actually what God is inviting us into. He cares a lot about our behavior and our holiness and our works even.
Yes.
But it's not that those works and behavior will earn us something. It's that they will be a natural outflow that proves you have been approved of. It's very nuanced.
And it just goes to show how broken we are in this world, like just relationally broken we are, because we just can't help but think like, yeah, but what do I need to do so you'll still like me?
Yes.
And it's like, no. It's really not that at all. Like he likes you. He loves you.
Yeah.
It goes back a couple of weeks when, I talked about that song, like, is my master satisfied with me? Is he satisfied? Is Jesus? Yes. He is, but he has like great things for you,
Yeah.
you know? So.
Yeah. So I think in closing, as you process what we've talked about, this is a good opportunity to ask yourself the question that Colby asked on Sunday. Ask again, like, where am I being kind of bewitched away and lured away into trusting my own works? And like we talked about, there's some red flags that you can kind of diagnose in your own life of, is there some self-righteousness? Are you really calculating in all of your relationships? Are you feeling a distance from God? Are you feeling despair that you'll never be able to work hard enough and you just feel the shame of that? All of those are things we can be free from as we rest in that covenant keeping love that he has for us.
Yeah.
And as we receive that covenant keeping love from him, we're able to give that to others and go all the way for our friends and for our spouse and for our children, not because they earned it or did the right things, but because that love is just overflowing and bubbling out of us in all the ways.
Yeah. And there's a freedom and a joy in that.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for listening, and we'll be back next week.
See ya.